What gear do you need to shoot the Milky Way? Can you use an iPhone? Do you need a big, expensive full-frame SLR? Well, let me clear this up for you because this is a question I've had hundreds of times. No, you can't use an iPhone, and no, you don't need a full-frame SLR. Sure, it's nice to have, and you'll probably get better results, but it's not essential. You could use an entry-level DSLR or a mirrorless camera, and you'll still get great results because the actual camera isn't anywhere near as important as the lens. The sensor is really good on this camera. It's a good quality camera, and I'll get lower noise in my images, which is great when you do long exposures at high ISOs. But you can make a compromise and still use an entry-level DSLR. You'll still get great results. So that's something to consider. The camera, not that important. The lens, on the other hand, is quite important. So two things you need to look out for. Number one is a very wide aperture, or as wide as you can get really. And on this, I've got a 2.8. You might find that your kit lens comes with a 3.5. I've still seen people get good results with a 3.5 kit lens and a basic DSLR camera. But if you're interested in doing Milky Way photography on the long term, I would probably invest in a wider angle and wider aperture camera, lens rather. For example, the Rokinon 14mm f2.8. That means that you can allow lots of light into the camera by using a wider aperture. And because this is 14mm, I get a much wider field of view, and the movement in the stars is much less apparent when you have a wider angle because everything is so much smaller in comparison. If I zoomed in on the stars, within just a few seconds you're going to see movement. But when you're zoomed all the way out, you can shoot for 30 seconds, 35 seconds without seeing movement in the stars. So that's what you need to consider really. You don't need a full-frame DSLR camera. It doesn't need to be that important, but you do want to start investing. If you're going to do this long term, you want to start investing in a wide angle lens. Wide angle, or rather ultra wide angle with a wide aperture. So this is a 14mm Rokinon with an f2.8. There, I believe Sigma does a 14mm f1.4 or an f1.8, which is remarkable. I might invest in that myself. And you could actually get half decent results with a 18mm 3.5. It just depends on what you're shooting and what compromises you're willing to make. When you're shooting with that, you'll have a shorter shutter speed and you'll have a higher ISO, but you'll still get to capture the Milky Way. So it's worth considering. That's the gear that you need. And obviously, this goes without saying, a tripod as well. That's more of an accessory than the actual camera gear, but you need to be able to hold your camera steady for very long exposures. So a tripod and some sort of remote or intervalometer to fire the exposure is very useful too. Thanks very much for watching. That's just one of the 7 keys to mesmerizing Milky Way photography. If you'd like to see the other 6, go ahead and click on the link below this video and you'll be taken through to a page where you can watch the whole video. It's everything you'd want to know to get started right away with Milky Way photography. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the whole video.